All right, welcome into Yard Prep on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Eric Wiedeke. You can follow him. I did that right again. You can follow him right there on Twitter as well. We're sponsored here by Prize Picks. We'll get into some of that as we go forward. Use the code 5, FIVE, legal in the state of Florida. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. It's that simple. $5, play it. You get your $50. Okay. No, there's no gimmicks or anything like this. And again, we'll get through some of the plays today as we go forward on the board. Dolphins are in Cleveland. We've got our guy Eric Smith. Like Coach Smith is not here today. He made the trip to Cleveland. He'll actually be in the stands. He'll be providing stuff from his account. OL Coach Smith 63, I believe. So check that out on Twitter. We're posting those up on the 5 Reasons Sports page. The big story, do we have it officially yet, Eric? Are the inactives out? We usually do this about an hour before the game for that reason.
Yes. Tua is officially out. So that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start there because I know that everybody's going to talk about this. I saw, obviously, there's a lot of frustration and anger considering that this did not seem to be a possibility earlier in the week. Tua said that the hip was not a real problem. Then it was a problem. Then he was doubtful. Now he's out. I saw a report from someone who posts a lot on Dolphins Twitter. I don't know how reliable this is, that essentially Tua wanted to play, but the training staff held him out. Regardless of which, this will be the 5th game that he's missed this season. Tyler Huntley is going to start this one. We talked so much before the year, Eric, about their backup quarterback situation and that counting on Tua to play all 17 again was fool's gold, essentially, what they got last year. This is the first time that he's missed a game for a non-concussion issue in quite a while, or a non-head injury issue. Of course, the hip, although this is supposedly a different spot, has been an issue for him in the past. Of course, that's what he came into the league with, was coming off of hip surgery. I guess the only hope is that now Tyler Huntley is not being signed off the street, that he's been in the system for a little while and he'll play better than he did when he played the last time around when he had an opportunity. But I can't cut, and we'll get to the playoff picture in a second, I can't cut them a break for any of this because you had to expect that Tua was going to miss time. Where do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it just highlights a lot of the issues that we saw at the very beginning of the season. I still think, even though, we've had Huntley around or they've had Huntley around for 5-6 weeks now, no one's comfortable with him starting this football game. If you polled 10 people, 9 of them would not have confidence at least that he's going to perform well in this football game, because truth be told, again, and this is just one of those things with Mike McDaniel, he has not given Dolphins fans a reason to believe that he can put together a game plan that works for a backup quarterback, whether it's Teddy Bridgewater, whether it's Skylar Thompson, whether it's Tyler Huntley. It hasn't happened to this point. And so I think, again, we find ourselves in this position and in a game that might actually mean something. We'll see what Giants Colts turns out to be, but it's just another meaningful game where Tua's not available, and the Dolphins, we'll see if they're able to muster something without him.
Well, okay, let's give an update on that, and then we'll get back to the Tua conversation. So as we speak, and we're recording this about an hour before kickoff in Cleveland, the Colts are down 8 to the Giants. Giants have the ball late in the third quarter. So, the Dolphins have gotten help, and they didn't get it last week. Of course, there's been an issue of helping themselves at times, but they didn't get it last week, but they did get it this time around, where the Bengals have lost. The Bengals win. Bengals beat, obviously, and push Denver out. Of course, the Chargers, they clinched. They won their game. But essentially what you need now is you need the Colts to lose 1 out of 2. Well, that's happening, at least at the moment. And then the other thing that you need is, obviously, you got to win your 2 games. So that's today and then against the Jets. We may or may not have Aaron Rodgers in that game. Of course, that game's meaningless to the Jets except for draft position. And then additionally, you needed Kansas City has to lose. It has to beat Denver. But the problem with that is Kansas City doesn't appear that they're going to have much to play for. Again, although I guess right now they are What are they? They lost. They lose the tiebreaker to Buffalo, right? But
No,
they
they got to 15 wins. As long as they got to 15
right. So
wins, they
it's
got to
over with.
win. Yeah.
Right, that's right. So losing the tiebreaker to Buffalo doesn't matter, right? 15-1, so they're the 1 seed, so they don't need that game. So I mean, looking at the AFC right now, Chiefs 15-1, they'll be the 1 seed. The Bills are in position to be the 2 seed, 12-3. Of course, they've clinched the division already. The Ravens are now a game up on the Steelers, who've lost 3 in a row. So they're in good position to be able to close down the AFC North and get the 3 seed. Houston position to get the Colts lose today, then I guess that's over with, right? Or did they? I think Houston clinched a playoff spot, but not the division. Is that right? Yes, I believe that's right. They have not clinched the division yet. So essentially, they're in position now where the Colts are a game and a half behind Houston, and then the Chargers are locked into a wild card spot. The only question is which one, whether or not they'd be ahead of the Steelers. So really, what we're talking about here is what we've been talking about for a while. Is can the Dolphins get the 7 seed and essentially get annihilated in the first round, right? Like that's all. They're going to face they're not going to face KC, so it's going to be either Buffalo, most likely would be Buffalo, or Baltimore, right? Two teams that have recently beaten them in the playoffs. I mean, all these teams we're talking about: Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Pittsburgh have beaten them in the playoffs recently. Yes, as well as relying on Carson Wentz. Because you're not going to see Mahomes in that game, and you'll see what Wentz looks like in that season. Now, Wentz has something to prove. I'll say this: that's actually not the worst thing because he's trying to prove he can still be a viable quarterback in the NFL, and so there is some motivation there. And Andy Reid doesn't usually just give games away, so I guess you're kind of hoping for that. But the odds of this are not good. But the Dolphins shouldn't be in this position, and this is why I come back to this. I'm watching that Colts game in the first half, and I'm just like, they're just not very good. They're just not very good. Like the teams that the Dolphins were competing with at the bottom of the AFC, like the Chargers, bring in Harbaugh, came in the league season with no receivers, right? They redid the whole receiver. Now McConkey's become a factor. These are not, I mean, the teams at the top of the AFC, yes. Okay, Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, those are 3 teams we thought would be there. I played the Pittsburgh over this year. Tomlin always keeps them competitive. Houston, we figured somebody had to win that division, right? So it's probably going to be Houston, even though Stroud hasn't been good this year. But that last spot, like, you shouldn't be behind the Colts. They're behind the Colts because largely of the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
And that they didn't protect themselves when Tua was out. And that's why I just come back to this, like, win or lose today. And, they'll win on the strength of the defense. That's why I've said repeatedly, Greer's got to go. And I go to one thing, the quarterback situation. That's it. Like, we can talk about the offensive line, everything else, and all the issues. Weaver's kept them competitive defensively this year, even with the injuries. But that's where I'm at with it. But let's get to this game specifically. And Cleveland, which, again, doesn't have anything to play for, but has stepped up and won in these situations, right? Even though they're 3-12. I mean, they had that win against Pittsburgh on a Thursday night. Obviously I'm looking at, they've scored the fewest points in the AFC, 255 points. Okay. This is a game in which you would figure it's going to be on the Dolphins defense, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have to imagine the one thing that really concerns me in this game defensively for the Dolphins is that you're facing another quarterback that can run the football. And I know, obviously Dorian Thompson-Robinson, not a household name, but the guy is very mobile. And the Dolphins in these situations, specifically against mobile quarterbacks, tend not to do well historically. But again, it's going to be, if the Dolphins do anything in this game, it won't even, I don't even want to say the defense in general so much as I want to say the defensive line. If the Dolphins win this football game, it'll be because Zach Sealer and Chop Robinson made plays,
right?
Like point blank, period.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I think, again, we look at the safeties. It's not going to be them, right? Welsh just talked about this. Poyer and Holland have been useless. I mean, has Holland already bought his ticket for out of town? I'm just curious, like, watching the tape this year, are teams going to look at that and say he was just unhappy in Miami, or has he seriously declined? Javon hasn't made a play since week 1. I'm really impressed, honestly, with what Weaver has done with the defense, where they've really had about 4 guys play at a consistently high level, and Chop's been one of them over the second half of the season. But I mean, Brooks, obviously, I think, and you take a look at Sealer. We mentioned Chop. They lose Jalen Phillips early season. Jalen Ramsey's played at a high level. I know there have been a couple of games where he hasn't, but the metrics all show he's played at a high level. Fuller's missed some time. Obviously, they had the situation with Shaq Barrett where he's supposed to come into camp. He doesn't come to camp. Chubb never comes back. So, I mean, you look at the adjustments he's made. I think Weaver's made a case for himself to get some head coach interviews this offseason, which would be a shame because then you're going to have another defensive coordinator on. Not a shame for him, obviously, as a human being, but a shame for the Dolphins to have another defensive coordinator. And Welsh mentions Campbell's last game in Dolphins uniform today was amazing, and at that age, unreal. Great performance. I don't know where they'd be without Calais Campbell, either in the locker room or on the field. But you're right. It is on Sealer. It is on Chop. It's on the same guys that we've talked about recently. Maybe Ramsey gets a pick. I don't think Cleveland is going to open it up all that much. They don't have a ton of firepower right now. Again, this is a game that the Dolphins should be in position to basically win these two games and at least have the 7 seed. And the fact that they don't, again, goes back to all the time that's Tua's missed. All right, let's go through some of the props today, just so we give people a sense of it, because, again, it's a good way to play off of it and see what's going to happen. Devon Achane, 28.5 receiving yards. I played it over. To me, this is dump off after dump off after dump off today. I have a hard time seeing the receivers being all that involved. I don't really know that the running game is going to get going. I feel like, again, it's sort of the extended handoffs to him. Let me give you 3 props here. You tell me which of them you like the best.
Sure.
Jonnu Smith at just 19.5 that's the Goblin. So they have him at, was it 29.5 receiving yards today? Let me see. Oh, they don't actually put it up. They just have the Goblin one. So that's 19.5 receiving yards. You got to clear that, right? I would figure. And then let me give you the other receiver props here. Hill, 41.5 receiving yards. You want to tell a story of the Dolphins season? 41. Would you play Tyreek over?
I don't think I would, actually. Well, with no Waddle, maybe, but man, I do not feel good about it.
Well, no Waddle. The one guy I could see benefiting for that, obviously, is Malik Washington. So I played him over last week. Got a win out of it. They don't have him for yardage, though. They have basically, you get the better numbers here, or the better amount of money back if you play him over the half a rush or receiving touchdown. That one is on there. But here's the key question here. Tyler Huntley, 165.5.
With the weather in Cleveland today, I say under.
Can they win the game if he's under?
Yes. I think there's a better chance they win the game if he's under than if he's over, honestly.
Maybe so, because if they're coming back and trying to make plays at the end of the game, obviously that would work. All right, let me give you a couple on the Cleveland side here, and then we'll get to our picks. 157.5 passing yards for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, which, by the way, is exactly the number he hit in Cincinnati last week, 157.
I would lean under again.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right about the weather. What about the kicking situation here? It doesn't seem like it's too bad. Sanders, 1.5 field goals made. You can get Dustin Hopkins at half a field goal made with a Goblin. That seems like a fairly fair bet that Cleveland gets 1 field goal in this game. And then looking at some of the receivers, Elijah Moore, 25.5 receiving yards. Obviously, the running back today is Jerome Ford, 57.5 rushing yards. Jerry Jeudy, 44.5 receiving yards. Any of that appeal to you?
Is David Njoku on the board? Because I'm looking at tight ends versus the Dolphins defense.
Is he active? Because I had heard he might not play today. I think he might. Let me see what the latest is on him, because there was a report that, because of course the former Canes tight end, but there was a report that he was doubtful. Hold on a second. Let's see. I do not know. I don't see him on the board. Somebody would have to tell us here, because I have not seen anything on this for a couple of days. And I know the inactives have just come out. Here we go. David Njoku ruled out. He's out.
Okay. So yeah, I'd go with Elijah Moore out of those 3.
Okay. Elijah Moore. All right. So what do we think happens in the game here? Let's get to our picks.
Oh God, this is gonna be. You know what? I just want it to be over, Ethan. Give me 13-10 Cleveland.
Oh my God. Well, it could be over anyway, right? Well, no, it can't be, right? Because the Colts could
It
still
can't
lose the
be.
next
Yeah.
one if they
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
I'm just watching the Colts and I'm like, oh my God, how did the Dolphins end up in this position? I I I think I'm gonna say 13-10 Dolphins, so we'll be aligned on that.
Yeah.
However, I absolutely, and I guess this is where I am with Mike right now. I absolutely could see some kind of a late mistake, timeout situation. The discipline's been better lately, I will say that, but
Yeah.
some kind of procedure penalty, something. There may be something at the end of this game which does seal their fate. I kind of feel like just with the gods, they like it to be as painful as possible for Dolphin fans. So extend it one more week and then find a way to lose to the Jets at home, or again, the other result, the Chiefs result, doesn't go the way that they want. But I I I I don't know. I absolutely could see an issue at the end of this game or something else
Mhm.
along these lines. It feels like the Colts game to me. Like that. You look back at
Yeah.
that Colts game. That really was a season. Like that was. I mean, and you had who did you have playing quarterback in that game? Dan Boyle, right? That's who was
Uh,
playing quarterback at the end of that game.
yeah. Tim Boyle was playing quarterback at the end
Tim
of that
Boyle,
game.
Dan Boyle, Tim Boyle. That's right. I know. Right. Tim Boyle
Yeah.
was right. That's how meaningful it was. Still never
Yeah.
won an NFL game. So you had Boyle playing the game at the end of the game. Of course, this season started with Skylar Thompson as the backup quarterback. And again, this just summarizes everything that there are some good players on this team. Greer has made some decent decisions. You look at Chop's development late in the year, picking up Smith as a free agent. There's some good, but you are what your record says you are, and they are basically counting on that. They had these two layup games at the end of the season, and it may not even matter. It probably won't even matter because they're counting on other teams to do their work for them, and now they have to do it without Tua. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out over the next week, Eric, about how badly he wanted to play. I have
Yeah.
a feeling that as the noise starts to get louder, there may be people around him who kind of get that information out because that's what tends to happen here. But I feel like all we talk about in South Florida sports these days is who's out. Jimmy's out, Tua's out. And I can say right now, Tua, was he missed? He's missed 5 out of 16, right? So he's missed
Yep.
31%. Jimmy after after today will have missed he will miss 33%, 10 out of 30. So it's a battle between Tua and Jimmy to see who is less available this season. But Jimmy's coming back on the first. If they lose today, Tua's not playing in that finale. So that's not going to happen. So sell your tickets now.
It's gonna be a tight race all year.
It's a tight race. That's not the kind of race that you want, actually. Barkov has actually missed more time than both, but he's trying to play all the time. So,
Right. Yeah.
and they just want a Stanley Cup, so he's forgiven. All right, we appreciate it, Eric. Thank you. Use the code 5FIVE. Get that match, 10-1 match. Put down $5, get $50. That is really legitimately the only reason to watch this game. It's the only reason. I'm putting in kicker props right now. Sanders over 1.5 field goals. Kind of like that one. And if Mike will actually take the points in this game, which I feel like he will, and then I like the prop of taking the other kicker, Dustin Hopkins, over half. So play that today, double your money, and get your $50 free. Thank you very much. We'll be back for post game. I think Lewis will be back for that one, although he may stay sick if this game is as sickly to watch as we think it's going to be.
See you guys.